All right, welcome back and welcome to lesson 20 in the Houdini Environment Beginner Series. We're going to continue where we left off and actually only cover a part of this section because the rest of it I'm going to save for bonus lessons. But we're going to extend what we set up in the last two lessons, which was this little mini slap comp and then our new camera animation that we actually made in lesson 18. And we're going to extend that into a multi-shot workflow. So where we can have maybe 2 or 3 cameras. Let's add probably 2 more. And then I'll show you how to set up the render setups with a ROPNet for us to batch render multiple sequences together and then even change maybe the color of the lights or additional little variations to the scene. So we can kind of reuse some of our setup and then also keep it efficient when we're doing multiple cameras. So to start, I'm actually going to make a new camera. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to alt drag to duplicate this one. And we are going to change it just a little bit. And then I will set up 2 sequences and maybe even do some more compositing, but we'll see how long the render times take. So maybe I'll just do 5 frames. Yeah, why not? So we'll do a few frames for compositing. So let's go. First thing to start, I am actually going to shake to disconnect, and I want to move this camera below this null. So I'm going to call this our multi-shot workflow. And what I'm going to do is use this, and I'm going to branch out, and I'm going to create kind of multiple copies of this similar setup. So if I go here, go to our new camera, and we can even connect this down to here if we want to skip and only have this new cameras that we're actually working on. So this we're going to say is our camera 1. We can even name this. So let's do A, our new camera. Our hero camera, why not? And now what we're going to do is I'm going to alt drag to duplicate this, and I'm going to name this B, our second camera. And then I'm going to go to transform here, and what I actually want to do is extend the timeline here back to 120, because during our animation, our camera lesson, we were animating over 120 frames, but for the compositing I switched it to 60 so that we could have our sample render take a little bit less time because we were only rendering half the frames. So here for camera B, our second camera, I'm going to select that in our view up here, and then I'm actually going to go back to frame 1, right click, keyframes. I'm going to delete the keyframe for translate, and then go back to rotate, keyframe, remove keyframe, and then I'm going to skip to the end, 120, right click, keyframes, remove keyframe, and then right click, keyframes, remove keyframe. And I'm going to reposition this camera into a different scene or a different placement than what we had the other one. And I'm going to hit, first select this camera. I'm going to change the focus. So I'm going to hit enter of the scene view, shift F to view our focus plane. And maybe we want, this is a 50 millimeter, so maybe we want 35 for this second camera. And we'll do, let's do here. Let's actually do, so shift left click again to change the focal distance or focus distance. All right, let's just leave it here. You can mess around as much as you'd like to set up a cool scene. This is exactly what I did for the trailer. And again, those shots exactly are actually right here. All right, well, let's leave it here. I'm going to reset the focus to this dome here. I'm going to stop the animation, or stop the rendering on frame 120, which is fine. I'm going to set a keyframe for translate and a keyframe for rotate. I'm going to go back to frame 1 by hitting this button here. I'm going to move this just a little bit, and maybe here will be our animation. And again, these are Bezier interpolations. I can type linear here and do pasting this on every single one. Or another thing I could actually do is on my animation editor, which I'll close out and open up again. New pane type, animation editor. I can make sure B, I want to make sure you see our second camera, the correct one I'm looking at, is selected. I'm going to hit H, so home my keyframes, select them all, and I'm going to hit this straight line to make them all linear. That way I don't have to go through channel by channel, setting them all to linear. And let's hit escape over the scene view now, and I'm going to do a flipbook preview. And again, uncheck resolution, so now we get the correct aspect ratio of 22:9, which is what we had in our camera lesson. And if I start, we'll see what our animation looks like from this new camera. And then we'll do a third, and then I will show you excuse me, how to render them, and then how to maybe make a few extra variations and adjustments. So I'm going to disconnect this session, click back here, Alt drag will make this C our third camera, and then again I'm going to select here. You see on this animation editor it's C, our third camera, selected. I'm just going to delete all the keyframes, and I have to go select them all, and backspace was what showed and hid this little panel on that side. And then for this C, let's do, well, no, let's do here. Maybe we'll go this direction and move maybe there. Why not? So here on frame 1, I'm going to set a keyframe on translate and rotate. Jump to frame 120. Make sure our camera is selected still. Move it, and then set it again. And then I'll select all of these keyframes and hit the straight line. And there we go. And maybe I could do a flipbook. Again, make sure resolution is unchecked, so we're rendering at the current resolution of this window here. And I'll click start, and then we'll see what our next camera looks like. And one thing we should do before we actually render this is the focus distance. Oops. I'm going to open up the M-Play window again. The focus distance is probably incorrect, so you always check your render preview before you actually render out a new camera. So disconnect. And if I do Karma XPO, you'll see it's not quite out of focus, but it is a little bit. So if I select this camera, I'm going to show you again, hit enter over the scene view. I can do Shift F to show my focus plane, and then I can click in the scene with a Shift left click to set where that focus plane is. And then on this node, it is under sampling and focus distance. And we can change our f-stop to change the actual intensity of that depth of field. So there we go. That'll be good. And then what we're going to do now is pause this render, and I'm going to set up 2 new render setting nodes by first going here. I'm going to change this Karma render settings to A camera. And I want to make sure in our camera settings, since we did rename this one, I'm going to actually set it to A, our hero camera. And I'm going to alt drag and duplicate these 2, the USD render app and then the Karma render settings. And the reason I'm duplicating the camera render settings instead of creating a new one, actually, I'm going to delete this one because I want to show you one more thing. I'm actually going to select these and I'm going to Control and Alt and then drag. Okay, maybe not Control Alt. So I'm going to delete this again. It looks like there's a shift I need to hold. So try, okay, whoops, not that one. Most of the hotkeys I know by muscle memory. So I'm going to ignore that. I accidentally duplicated the whole network and I just escaped to undo. Okay, whoops. All right, well, we'll just do this now. If you select the node, you right-click the node, and then you go to Actions, create reference copy, which is what I was trying to do with hotkeys. You can create a new node that has all these parameters referenced from this one, which is what I wanted to do because we had set up our, I'm going to color this green so we remember. We set up a few AOVs here and then maybe some render settings, and we might want to keep those. But here I'm going to connect to that. I'm going to change this to Bcam. And then camera, I'm actually going to right click, delete channel, and then change camera to Bcam. So all these green ones are setup, not setups, excuse me. These are parameters that have been referenced and are being copied from this node. So if I change this resolution to 1400, it'll update it on this render settings as well as this render settings here automatically. So I'm going to set that back here. This is going to be Bcam. And then what I can do is I can Control C, Bcam, and paste it. And since it's already a reference copy, this new camera render setting node will also inherit and copy by default these settings from here, ACam. So I'm going to set this to CCam. And then connect here, our third camera. And now you see it's giving me this error because B camera is not connected. So here on cameras, I'm going to connect C, our third camera. And there we go. Now if I select this render settings node, go to render settings camera, let it think. I can now switch between my shots. Cool. So that's a good start. Now let's keep going. I'm actually going to duplicate this render route. Duplicate the render route. And this is just a regular duplicate because there's not many settings here I need to copy. And there's actually one setting I should change, which here is render settings. I'm going to drag this Bcam here. Drag Ccam onto this third one here. So make sure this render route that is aligned with the render settings here is referencing its correct render settings primitive. And I believe it does this by default, but for redundancy, I'm just going to manually select it there. And we'll rename this to render cam A. This will be render cam B because we're actually going to reference this in a ROPNet. Render cam C. And then I'm going to leave our COPNet here and I'm going to do a ROPNet. This will be batch render all. And what I'm going to do is put this in a network box. And I'm going to put these here. Because I want to make a little, I'll make this black or dark color so we don't really see it, but we know it's there. I'm actually going to make this little, so I kind of know that this ROP is going to be my render settings or my network that will render these three ones here. So when I jump inside here, what I want to do is I want to fetch node, and I'll say this is fetch cam A. Then I want a batch node. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy these. So now I have 3 fetch and then 3 batch. And then I'll just connect them in a daisy chain like this. I actually don't need this last batch node, so I'll shape to disconnect it. And now what I want to do is in this fetch node, this lets me get a ROP, a render output, render operator actually. So I'm going to control copy render cam A, jump back inside my batch render all. On fetch cam A source, I'm going to control V, and then I'm going to change that to a relative path. And I'm going to copy this. On this one, I'll name it cam B. And I'll actually go back up to show you again. So you to go up, render cam B, control C, jump inside here, paste it, set to relative path. You to go up, give it a second to think, render cam C, control C, jump inside, paste it, and there's fetch cam C. And then this will be a relative path as well. There we go. Now I'm going to say select everything, hit A, drag down to arrange these. And now what happens if I hit render here on render cam C, what's going to happen is it's going to go back up to render cam C. It's going to get these settings for which frames it's going to render. And then it's going to apply those settings to the same on B and same on C. And what this batch node is going to do, it's going to say render everything above, complete all the camera A's, and batch those together, and then go to camera B's. So if I didn't have these two batch nodes, it would do one frame, one frame, one frame, then frame 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. But I want them all done in a sequence. So I want all A, then all B, then all C. You to go up. And what I'm going to do, I'll set this to a low resolution. 600 might be too small, but I want to actually do a preview of all of these. And you'll notice now that I set this render resolution to 1200 and the path trace samples to 16, the nice thing about having this reference copy is because that will set it for the other shots as well. So this is now kind of our master shot where we can set our render settings and our resolution. And then these are actually copied and referenced from this one. So I'll go select here, camera render settings, make sure render settings camera is selected. And I'm actually going to do a preview render to see how long it takes to render with our 16 samples. And it takes 5 seconds, but you see it's a little noisy. So maybe for this, we will do image output, filters, no denoiser, we'll put optics. And let's do a restart. It's a little voice crack. All right, here we go. And it should be about 5 seconds as well. I'm going to do Houdini VK and make sure camera B, the focus is all set correctly. Looks good. And we'll make sure cam C is all set correctly. And there we go. Looks cool. Looks really cool, actually. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to render the first. Let's do 60 again, because why not? And then we'll go to cam A, 1 to 60. Actually, 60 might be a lot. So I'll set it to 30, but you can render whatever you'd like to render for these sequence. I'm just going to render these so we have a sample thing to work with for our compositing. So jump inside here, and I will, you to go up. I'm going to correctly make sure everything's done in the right way. Looks fine to me. Actually, for cam A, I'm going to update this render settings primitive here, and I'm going to drag our render settings. All right, I'm going to start this render, and I will be back in hopefully a little bit of time once they are completed. So, all right, see you soon. All right, welcome back. Funny mistake. So I actually made a mistake, so I'm going to leave it in, excuse me. When I was rendering these, I rendered out A cam, and then, whoops, not in there, and then B cam and C cam, but I actually had A cam, and then B cam would overwrite A, and then C overwrote B, which was overwriting A. So I ended up with one batch of renders. And the reason for that, and if you did that, I apologize, but that is because our output picture is being copied from cam A and not from the correct one. So what we need to do is we need to Control C on this one here, which is the expression we want to have on these other ones. I'm going to select this Karma render settings, right click on output picture, delete channels, and just paste that expression. And then same thing for camera C. So on output picture, right click, delete channels, select everything, and paste. And now if I middle mouse button, what this is going to do is it's going to save it to the correct directory for C cam, B cam, and then A cam. So B and then A. So what I'm actually going to do is I am going to render everything again, and then I'll be back in another 25 minutes because that's what it took to do the first render. So I'm going to double check again, make sure we're not going to overwrite our renders again. And that's a good lesson. So don't do full resolutions, usually do partial resolutions to test, because if this was a 2, 3, 4 day render, that would be, a really annoying thing to have happen. So jumping inside, batch render, make sure A, B, C, render, and then I'll be back in another 25 minutes with our updated rendering. So, all right, be right back. Welcome back, and let's keep going. That was about 25 minutes again. And this time we actually did get our correct renders because we've changed the output picture on our Karma render settings. So good tip there. Usually that happens sometimes and you learn by making the mistake. So we're going to continue. We're actually not going to use this CopNet for our compositing. I'm going to put together a new one really quickly just in case you didn't follow along with the compositing setup, which was the last lesson in this series. So we're going to say our multi-shot comp. We're going to jump into here. We're going to do a file node, which is going to be shot A. And then we're going to duplicate this down here, and we're going to do C and B. And for the file name, we're going to do $hip / render and acam. Whoops. I want acam, and then this one right here. And instead of this 4-patterned integer, we're going to do a $F4, which will now select the correct image based off of our frame number. So now to fix this and see what actually was going on, I'm going to unpin this one and repin it. Actually, it is set to 1, so that's fine. And I'm going to do composite view, and there we go. And now if we pan through here, we should see our render animation being updated. Now what we're also going to need to do is we're going to click this add AOVs from file, and now we'll get the render AOVs that we have set up from before, which I think was in the compositing lesson. So definitely jump there if you need those, but for the purpose of this lesson, if you want to skip those, you could use this as out shot A, and I'll set these up for shot B and shot C, but we're going to do a few quick compositing setups for C for the rest of them. So I'm going to go to shot A. I'm going to copy this, Control C, go down to shot B, the file, paste it, and then I'm going to change ACam to BCam and ACam to BCam. If I select this, we now have our second camera, which does look a little similar, but it's a different camera, and for the purpose of this lesson, it will be perfectly fine. So now we'll jump into C. This is also just the default image that Houdini uses. So C cam and C cam. And here we go. So there we go. Awesome. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a add, because I want to now combine again these ones, but I am going to do one quick change to the tower light. I actually won't do a gamma. I'm going to do a bright source, and then I'm going to do another add here, foreground, bright to foreground. And now if we're moving a little quickly, then I would recommend you look at the compositing video because I explained this all in that other one. But what exactly is going on here is I'm adding together physical sky and sphere light to get this set up. And then I'm merging on top our original light here, which was this tower light render layer that we did set up before. And now what I can do is slide these over, make a little bit of space, and now I'm actually just going to copy. First, actually, I'm going to set a keyframe on this one here because I want our light to start off. So I'll go to frame 6, set this add on this blend, mask to 0, keyframe it. We'll go to 18, actually maybe 16. Nice even in the middle. We'll set this mask to 1, keyframe it, and then back to frame 30. Or actually 28, let's do. And I'm going to set this mask back to 0. So now all we have in this animation, if I look in the animation editor, if I hit H, I can frame it. We have our light starting off, increasing in brightness, and then it decreases again and turns back off. And now I'm just going to copy these exact same nodes. So I'm going to select these three. I'm going to Alt drag to duplicate. And then I'm going to go to shot B, add AOVs from file. And then I'm going to connect, these to what we had for our B. And this output for the add can go into our out shot B null. And there we go. We got this light turning on and then off again. And we can look at our keyframes by just selecting the add node where we had set our keyframes. So we'll copy this one more time. Go back to shot C. Add AOVs from file because these have already been set up. And if you didn't actually set these up, you won't see these AOVs. So that's one important thing to note. And we'll connect this blend here. And now we've got outshot C, where the light turns on and then back off. And let's also do a glow. Let's add the glow here. So we'll add it only to the light itself on the tower. So I'm going to decrease the threshold and I'll increase the size a little bit. And then I'll select a frame here, 18, where it is visible. And let's actually do another glow, because why not? So I want a big glow and I want a small glow. And if I'm adding these glows together, what I want to have is on the bottom one, I want to disable, so I want to set output glow only so that I'm not adding the rest of the image back with itself. So I just want this glow that I'm adding. But this one is fine to have the glow and the base image because it is going to be used as the background in this add node. And then here on this bottom glow, I might decrease the size and maybe I will blend our mask just a tiny bit, maybe to 0.2 on this add. And there we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some space and I'm going to copy these three nodes up to each of these additional shots. So select these three, Alt drag, connect here, and connect blend to the foreground. And there we go. We've got our nice little glow that is set on this tower light, which we have also done. And we'll do it one more time by selecting these three nodes, dragging up, connecting here, and then this blend is going to be into our foreground. And there we go. So now I've got three shots, set up here. And now what we want to do, we want to do a ROP, not a ROP net. We want to do a ROP image output. And we're going to name this render shot A. And we're going to drag this null into our cop path. And this is going to render out, again, we've done this before, but we're going to render this out to actually mplay for now, just so we can see what the animation looks like. But if we did want to render to disk, we could do render to disk and set our render frame range. And another thing we could do, I'm going to hit U to go up. If you wanted to, you could do a right click, copy parameter, and then jump back into this comp net we were working in, our multi-shot comp. And you could paste the relative reference to make sure the image output here is only referencing frames that had been rendered from the USD ROP. But for now, we are not going to do that. I'm just going to drag this down here. Render shot B, drag in shot B. And one thing actually, these little lines that I have here, you might not have. And that might be in view here. Okay, dependency links. There's this option to set a view show for selected nodes, which is just showing you the dependency links for maybe parameters or different settings between nodes, but it looks like it does include that by default for our ROP image output. And I'm going to change this path to comp, and I'm going to change it to /$OS, and that'll be fine. I'm going to copy this actually and paste that in this ROP image output here. And I'm going to alt drag and set our out shot C to this setting right here in cop path. Paste that. And now if we did render to disk, we would see our shot here in the comp folder. But we should name this to C. All right, I'll render one to disk and then I'll render the rest of them to mplay so we can see. But if you're working on a shot by yourself, you would probably render them to disk and then use After Effects or Resolve or Fusion to combine those image sequences back into a video, so an MP4. So render to mplay. You can also actually use mplay to render the image sequence to a movie file. So we'll let that load up. Right click, I'm going to do color correction, untone mapped, aces. I'm going to let it finish all 30 frames. Then I'm going to disconnect it. Then I'm going to go to render shot B. Then I'm going to render to mplay. Then I'm going to open up. Okay, it looks like it did already. Right click. I'll do color correction, aces. And then once that finishes, I will disconnect it again, just so we can render a third. So render to mplay. And now we'll have our 3 shots. This one's kind of cool actually, the top down shot. Color correction, untone map to aces. And then we will open up our minimized renders, which we hid here. So here we go. We've got this shot here, which I think was shot A, this shot here, which I think was shot C, and then this shot here, which I believe was shot B. And if we did want to render these to a image, you could do File, Export, FFmpeg, and we'll let it think, and then you can define a location here for my render video. And then the other thing to note is this hip by default won't actually save it to the same hip as the other file, because this is an independent session of mplay. So you would have to click here. I'm not going to click it actually because it's going to take me to my C drive, but you could click here and select a new location on disk for where to save that. And then if you want aces here baked, as we have in this untone mapped in aces, you would go color space, use OpenColor.io to bake to OpenColor.io display view, and then you would just leave it at those defaults, which would bake this transform here to your video output. And there we go. We set up a little slap comp, put together 3 shots. You could definitely expand this, and I encourage you to do so, for maybe doing some additional glows, new shots, new areas in the scene. And then that's actually going to be an exciting thing we're going to do in some future bonus videos, where we will extend this scene to include maybe a few other shots. It was actually a list of some other ideas. So if I go back to Houdini, hit U to go up, let it think, these other ideas here. So let me know in the comments if there's any specific ones you'd want me to try to tackle. But some of these I'm going to let you do on your own. Some of these I might put up solutions to on bonus videos in the coming days or weeks. And then I do encourage you to try some of these challenge tasks. So lots of fun stuff you can do here. And this is another setup you can break down to kind of explore how I set up the trailer for this series, but it's the exact same workflow that I've done here. And then all these shots are actually very, very similar. So I actually did the not compositing for the last trailer, but I did that in Resolve, and I just did some basic color correction. But now that I've done animation here in Cops, it might be even better to do it all here, just because we could do some cool effects. So even lightning, flickering, sparks, fire, if you want to try fire, that might be a cool side effect, or side challenge, side quest you could do, to where you do, you can even copy the simulation files from the fire effects lesson, because those VDBs were included if you want to try rendering some extra AOVs in this scene for the fire. So awesome. That is going to be the end of this series, or this temporary series. We're going to have a few bonus lessons later, but let me know in the comments if there's anything specific you want to see for those bonus videos. And I thank you, and I will see you in all those bonus videos. So awesome. Thank you again, and I will see you soon.